You are listening to the CAD podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentech Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The CAD podcast. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CAD podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. I am Jim.
And I am Rocco.
At least for today. So we'll go with that. So, how are you doing this morning, Rocco?
Well, you're assuming that they're listening to the podcast in the morning. What if it's evening?
Well, it's morning somewhere. It's always morning somewhere. It's like drink o'clock. It's always drink o'clock somewhere, dude.
It's true.
You just got to roll with these things. So, what can you do? I'm not that smart a guy. I just assume, hey, it's morning for me. It's morning for everybody. So it's all good. No one's gonna mind. They realize we're just not that smart. So
there is a guy that I know. Every time you see him, he says "Good morning," regardless of what time of day it is. Good morning.
Good morning. Midnight. Good morning. It's morning somewhere. I like it. My kind of person. It's all good. So what are we doing? So today we're talking about innovation in 2D CAD and whether or not there is any. All right. So that's a good thing. All right. So yeah, like I said. So today the plan is we're going to talk about the 2D CAD world. It's the oldest and the most widely used aspect of the CAD world. But the question that we really want to try and answer today is, has it been left behind? Is there still an important place for the 2D stuff? And who, if anybody, is actually working those tools, right? And, or working with those to make them, simpler and faster and better to use. So I think first, let's understand what we're talking about here, right? When I say 2D, I mean that. I mean exactly that. Talking about planar level drafting with no 3D modeling involved at all. Right? I'm not talking about BIM hybrids or 2D construction plans that are extracted from the design models. We're talking about good old-fashioned 2D drafting work, right? Lines and arcs and circles and text and maybe even some dimensions just thrown in for fun. Yeah, all the stuff that ancient old cavemen like me began carving back into cave walls, way back when the dinosaurs still roamed the earth and I went to college on one. We want to discuss the need for it and the tools that are doing it best in the modern 3D-ified world of CAD. Right? So that's the plan for today. So, Rocco, right? Tell us about the market here. I mean, are there folks out there still using plain old 2D drafting, or has everyone begun making that move to the 3D and virtual design formats?
No, it all depends on what you're doing, right? I mean, but there's still plenty of folks that are on 2D, and plenty that are struggling to go to 3D because they kind of feel like they're being forced into it, or the market's driving it. And then there are those, let's say, a lot of the youngsters who just start out in 3D. So it's kind of all over the map. But 2D is definitely still alive and kicking. That's for sure.
Okay. All right. Cool. So So there's still a bunch of folks out there who are using nothing but 2D. Right? I see that all the time with our clients here at Zentech. So the thing is that they know the 2D systems that they're working in, and they can get their work done in, half the time of fighting their way through 3D designs. And it's the base process working in the 2D world. It's the base process for creating construction documents, right? At the end of the day, 3D models are still extracting 2D construction plans, for the jobs to actually be built from, right? So, 2D is obviously, it's still in demand. All right, but what that's going to leave us with here is the question of innovation, right? Are there new tools in this space, or are we kind of stuck with what we've had for decades in the 2D CAD world? I think the issue that we run up against as an industry is that the traditionally big players in this market have practically abandoned the 2D CAD system for more than a decade now. They've shifted all their development focus and have steered the industry really toward the holy grail of 3D and BIM modeling, right? Now, is that a bad thing? No. I mean, we've talked about this before on the podcast. I think that BIM and 3D are vital components of the design world. They have a really important place in this industry, but I don't think that the big name software developers are actively moving us that way for the benefit of the industry or for making our job easier, but more for the benefit of their own stock prices. On average, a 3D CAD system costs more than double the price of its 2D counterpart. Right? Not only that, but there's been, I think, a concerted effort in that area of 3D CAD systems to modularize. And what I mean by that is that these big developers, they break their tools down into industry-specific modules that don't interact very well together, right? And in order to force you to buy more software systems. All right, now, and I know what I sound like, right? I sound like I'm that paranoid old guy down the street wearing his tinfoil hat, right? But
do you actually have a tinfoil hat?
I have a collection of tinfoil hats. They all hang on my wall. It just depends. I wear different ones for different days and which space aliens are trying to control me. So,
wow.
all right, wise guy, don't you interrupt me. Lucky for you, I'm wearing my Rocco mind control hat today, so you can't tell me what to do. Oh goodness. Now, but really, in all honesty, though, it seems to be that the software developer, these software developers, they don't really want you working in the base 2D systems at all because they cost less, right? And I think the problem is, that if you're good with those 2D systems, you can really do every single industry with equal facility. It doesn't matter if you're doing architecture, or civil, or structural, or electrical. In 2D, we can all work in one system and do our work if we really want to, right? So my paranoid, aluminum foil hat wearing self has to ask, is that the real reason why there has been zero improvement from major software houses on the 2D side for so many years, right? So Rocco, what do you get from our clients on this topic, right? I mean, do they feel like they're being ignored for using the 2D tools regularly and that they're being forced toward the 3D modeling world against their will? Or do you find that most folks are in favor of the change and see that as a good thing?
I think it depends on the industry and what they're doing. But in general, I mean, if you take architecture, for example, you have a lot of smaller firms or folks that have been around for a lot longer who do feel like they're being pressured into moving to 3D. I mean, I get all the time, we're really seeing a lot of Revit files, and we're kind of being forced to learn Revit. It's not what we want to do right now, but if we want to move ahead, we need to learn Revit. So at some level, I do feel like they're being forced into it. I think from the manufacturing standpoint, I think that industry's been on 3D for many years now. Mm-hmm. So they've kind of adapted to it. I think they've moved more quickly into 3D. But at some level, I think that folks are being pushed into 3D. Right. And I think the learning curve is also, I think folks who are just getting into learning CAD, it's definitely more complex to learn 3D than it is 2D. You can kind of correct my thought if I'm wrong there, but what do you think from that aspect?
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, there's in 2D it's a little bit more intuitive to the way that people think, right? When we talk and we're showing people stuff, what do? We sketch, right? From the time we're little kids, we draw little figures in the sand, to show people how to do a football player, what we're trying to do. 2D sketching, it's part of the human psyche, and I think it's kind of native to what we do. And I think the 3D is a completely different mindset. And I think your point was a really good one, that in the manufacturing space it's a different thing, and I think it works better and is not as problematic in the manufacturing space, because a lot of the manufacturing happens in the office, in the facility, where everybody has the computers and the models and the wherewithal to actually get everything and do everything they need with the CNC and so on in one location. And I think in the AEC world is where we really see the dramatic difference, right? Because you can't take and effectively build with those 3D models. Not yet, right? We've talked about that in previous setups. Until someone builds, the rollout flat screen that we can take and just wipe off out in the mud and the rain, we still have to depend on 2D paper documents to build from. So I think that's where there's a big difference. But yeah, I kind of see the same thing that you do, right? There are a lot of people who aren't ready to make that move. So it leads me to ask, right? So if the users aren't always ready to make the move from 2D to 3D, right? And they know, or at least they suspect, if they're like me, that they're being forced into working in a mode that really isn't best for them, right? Why are they working consistently in the big name software systems, right? Why aren't they either raising a huge stink with those companies or moving to a different CAD system? I think number one that raising a big stink doesn't really help them. When one developer holds what is essentially a monopoly over this entire industry, and they do here in the U.S., right? They really don't care too much about the needs of their clients. Their primary concern is their own profitability, right? And the only answer to kind of address that stance is really the answer to the second half of my question, right? Why not move to another CAD system, right? And I think that's the real issue here. For decades now, right? That big name player in the U.S. I'm trying to be nice and not name people, but you all know who I'm talking about. The big CAD player here in the U.S. market has been buying up and shutting down any smaller competitor in order to preserve their monopoly, right? They've even actively worked to prevent good 2D tools that they picked up from those purchases of smaller companies from making their way into their own widespread systems, right? To push you towards that 3D business model, right? So what does a company do then, right? Where can we find actual innovation in 2D drafting in that type of environment, right? That's the big question. So if you all stick around, and we'll tell you how when we come back after this quick word from today's sponsor. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. Today's Cattle Call Podcast is being brought to you by BricsCAD, the latest and greatest CAD software out there on the market today. It's growing by leaps and bounds, and the beauty of it is that BricsCAD allows you to use all of your current drawing files, all of the CAD commands and macros and features and Lisp routines and customizations and configurations that you've already developed, right? Without any transition. Your people can be up and running in BricsCAD in a matter of hours, right? So to help you make that transition here at Zentex, one of the things that we've done is we have actually created a Make the Move to BricsCAD program to help you move from your Autodesk-based platform over into BricsCAD with minimal time and risk and investment. And Rocco is going to tell you all about it. Rocco?
I'm going to tell you all about it. Well, there's a great deal of information that's available right on our website. It's zentechconsultants.net. You can reach out to us at sales@zentechconsultants.net or give us a call, 866-824-4459. But yeah, that's the core idea behind it, Jim. If you're an AutoCAD user and you're looking to make the move to BricsCAD, we're here to help make an easier transition for you. So check us out. Let us know how we can help you.
Perfect answer. BricsCAD, the smartest CAD system on the market today. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, so Rocco, you know me. I always feel better when I have numbers to back up my arguments, even when they're crazy paranoid arguments with aluminum hats. So let's take a look at the maths for the state of the CAD world, right? And let listeners decide if I'm right or just some crackpot conspiracy guy. All right, so
well, you're a crackpot, that's for sure.
Well, that's just my native nature, you can't get away from who you are. So, so based on some info that I pulled from Statista and JB Knowledge Base, all right, here's some numbers that I think kind of tie into what I'm trying to say here. So, 2D, right, just straight 2D CAD software sales in 2019 were $2.1 billion with a B dollars in the United States. That's a big market. Okay, 3D CAD software sales in the U.S. in 2019 were $6.2 billion, right? Triple the amount, okay? Now, here's what's interesting about this, okay? 73% of construction projects make no use of BIM or 3D modeling in any way, right? Less than 9.7% of construction projects use 3D and BIM exclusively. Okay? 97% of all construction projects use 2D CAD designs in the United States. Okay? Wow. over 70% of the design build firms say 3D and BIM are not really needed for their work. Okay? Only 27% say that 3D and BIM is important to what they do. Okay? And yet, here's the thing that throws me, right? 86% of those design build firms say that 3D and BIM is the future of the industry. Okay? Right? And 91% of design build firms say that 2D CAD is vital to their daily work. Okay? So those are some really interesting numbers, right? So when you stop and look at that, right? So, a whole lot of folks are still very tightly tied to the 2D CAD world, and a very limited number of folks see 3D as vital to their work. Yet overwhelmingly, right, when they're asked, they all say that the 3D is the future of the design world. And I have to stop and I have to ask why. Okay? Is it possibly because they've been told that again and again and again and again? Right? Is it that the 3D BIM is giving you better tools, or is it better marketing that's driving that belief? Right? Could it be because the 3D software market, while used in less than 10% of the real world jobs, accounts for triple the profits for the big software developers as do their 2D CAD systems, right? Less than 10% of the work, but they're getting triple the profits off of it. Okay, so now, Rocco, with my aluminum foil hat, you tell me, am I being paranoid here, or are we seeing a forced market by monopolistic companies who are increasing their own share prices? All right, what do you hear from the front lines, right, from our clients on this push towards 3D BIM? Are people actually excited by the idea, or are they just accepting that this is what they have to do?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter half. I mean, I think they realize that they're being pushed into it, and it's driven by their customer base. I mean, most folks are followers. And you find the larger firms, particularly in architecture, are adopting BIM and have been adopting BIM for a while, and using the 3D technology. So they're really the leaders. But does everybody like the idea? Certainly not.
Right. And like I said, don't get me wrong. Like I said in the beginning, I think that 3D and BIM are amazing tools. I'm a huge fan of both, right? But it is not the right answer for everything, and I don't think that phasing 2D out and eliminating upgrades and better tools in that environment help anyone other than those big companies. All right, so I did promise that we had some answers on alternative 2D CAD tools, right? Systems that are actively improving their 2D CAD tool sets. Now, the truth of it is that there are a number of really good new CAD systems that have hit the U.S. market over the last few years. And the best of them are coming from overseas. They're not homegrown U.S. companies. And I think the reason behind this is that these companies have grown large enough in their own regions of the world that they can't be easily bought out or shut down by large U.S. developers. These guys have been actively building great tools for the design worlds, and they're moving into the U.S. and they're making really big headway into the CAD markets, particularly this 2D side. One of the biggest that comes to mind is BricsCAD, right? And they come from, pretty sure it's Belgium originally, right? And I think they were just recently in the last 2 years purchased in the U.S. here by Hexagon, right? And those are the folks who own like Leica Geosystems and Intergraph, so they're not a small company in their own right. But BricsCAD has done a really killer job of adding some really powerful 2D drafting tool improvements that just don't exist in their large name competitors. Right? I mean, in particular, and I think we've talked about this before, I'm a huge fan of their quad tool. Right? That's basically, it's just like this heads up app that you can access with the right click of the mouse on any object or in any space that you're working in, and it gives you all the content specific editing tools you need for whatever you choose. All right, so you don't need to learn and remember where tools are or in the menu or on the ribbon. Just right click and you get these pop-ups that give you everything you need, right? It even lets you change things like layer, color, line types, and half a dozen other properties on the fly without the need for toolbars and command lines and typing. Right? And I think that is the kind of update that people are looking for in the 2D CAD world. right? I think that's what people have been looking for, like I said, the better part of a decade. So Rocco, and to be fair, right, and we sell BricsCAD here at Zentech. So you get to spend a good chunk of time talking to people who've downloaded the free trial of BricsCAD, or they just purchased the software from us. What are their favorite features on the 2D side of things in BricsCAD?
Jim, I don't know that it's necessarily a feature. I think it's a simplicity of the product. I think it's a similarity to AutoCAD in terms of look and feel. I mean, but if you're going to get down to specific features, it does drive back to the similarities of AutoCAD. I mean, you got the L command for line, the M command for move, the Lisp auto Lisp integration. You have the quad tool that you just mentioned. But I think it's funny because a lot of people start off the conversation after they downloaded the trial. Wow, this is AutoCAD. This is so similar to AutoCAD. So for folks that are looking for a less expensive perpetual-based license structure, BricsCAD is the way to go, and I think that's one of the reasons why we sell and support it, because
right.
it is a fantastic tool.
Yeah, and it is. It's like I said, it is. It's much simpler, and it does look and feel exactly the way people expect it to, and they can kind of there's minimal learning curve. And like I said, it's got the full Lisp support and all that good stuff. So things like that, I think, are important when you're dealing with the 2D CAD world, right? It's about consistency, trying to keep it in what is the traditional framework of how people do their day-to-day operations, and then on top of it, adding new and better features, right? Adding in like artificial intelligence tools and other things. But let's be fair, right? Beyond BricsCAD, there are other players out there in the 2D CAD market, right? You got systems like ZW CAD and IntelliCAD, and they've both been around for a while, and they're both real solid systems, and they put a small dent into the big developers in this market. They're really good 2D CAD products, both of them, but I think the reason they haven't gotten more headway is that they're low-priced options. They just don't generate, from a business standpoint, I don't think they generate enough revenue to let them actively develop their systems with a really robust set of new tools and AI features and so on that a larger company like BricsCAD can do, right? And I really think that with that Hexagon tie-in, we're going to see big growth in that BricsCAD market share, along with a number of other players who are coming from outside of the U.S., right? Because I think they've developed their tool sets in a less, I guess it's not less competitive. I'll make up a word. I'll call it less vulturistic market, right? Than we foster here in America. I think that Europe and Asia, they have tighter controls over market competition. And I think they do a better job of restricting monopolies much more intently than we do here in the U.S. So, and I think as a result, they get a much more robust and competitive marketplace, right? And in kind of a level playing field, right, like that, right, where you can't have one player who owns everything. The only way to really distinguish yourself as a player in the CAD world in those regions is by presenting a better product. Okay, and I see that a lot of those developers, coming from Australia and Canada and the UK, are really having a big boom here in the American workplace, and I think it's simply because they're offering a better product at lower prices. Right? They're developing those tools that we all need in the 2D CAD world, and because of their locations and the governments that they work under, they're protected from being bought out and shut down by bigger companies, particularly U.S. companies, because of their government regulations in those nations. So honestly, I have to say that I think that in the long run, I think that is good for those of us who are still working in the 2D CAD world. And let's face it, the numbers that we read through, right, what we went through, say that that's just about all of us, right? So that's the key, right? It's all about getting tools and companies that are bringing new stuff to the table, and there are a number of them out there. So you just need to do a little bit of looking. Rocco, anything you want to throw onto that?
No,
No?
no,
Wow.
no. I do have an idea though. Completely off topic though.
Uh-oh. What's your
Yeah,
idea?
going back to your tin hat. I
Yeah.
think you should post a picture online of you and your tin hat,
I
Joe.
don't think anybody ever wants to see a picture of me anyplace.
No, they do. They do. Believe
No.
me.
My wife tells me I have a face for podcasting. It's the way it is, brother. All right, crazy man. I think we'll wrap it up there, and we'll catch you next time, folks, in the next episode of the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. Today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from y'all.